doing a show.
We'll do it live. Fuck it.
Hey, Matt.
Hey Frank.
All right, we watched part three of Netflix's acclaimed monster series. The first two were, we did a review on the first one, maybe, I don't know, close to 2 years ago now, I think,
I think that
which
was like
is
4 years ago, right?
no way.
Maybe three. It might have been like 3 years
Could
ago.
be pushing three, but that was the Jeffrey Dahmer one, which I remember that was the talk of the town for a long time.
It was.
Everyone was talking about, the Dahmer one. And then after that, I actually didn't see the Menendez brothers one. Did you see that one?
Yeah, that one was really good, dude. That one
Okay.
was really
That
good.
one
I think
I don't feel like there was as much buzz around that one as opposed to the Dahmer.
me personally, I thought that one was better than the Dahmer one, bro.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, reasons I can go on and on about, but that's
So
not
so
that's not what this is about. Clearly.
right. So
Yeah.
this series is was created by Ian Brennan and Ryan Murphy. This is the third installment of it for Netflix, and it is the Ed Gein story.
Mm.
Now Ed Gein is, in the world of like serial killer, pop culture, whatever you want to call it. I think Ed Gein is one of the more obscure figures. But what's interesting is that even though he doesn't have the name recognition that, say, a Ted Bundy does or that a Jeffrey Dahmer does, his story influenced, and this is alluded to in the show, influenced Hitchcock's Psycho, influenced the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is a really, in my opinion, hard to watch, very disturbing
Mm.
series. So I guess, maybe Matt, if you want to just like set the stage for us, if you're a viewer and you don't know much about Ed Gein's story, what are you preparing for here? And am I over exaggerating how disturbing this is?
No, I don't think you're exaggerating at all, but like I've done just like you, I've done kind of extensive research on the whole pretty much his entire story, right?
Yep.
And before I finished watching the show, I saw like a pop-up ad on like Google, whatever,
Hmm.
saying that a biographer who wrote about Ed Gein's real life story was displeased with this series.
Yeah, that's really
And
interesting.
I thought that that was really interesting. I'm like, wow, because the series got into like really graphic detail about his
Hmm.
life and just not even just his life, just like all the controversy surrounding Ed Gein, and it sort of makes you think like how much of this is actually real,
Right.
you know? So after I watched the show, just like I'm sure millions of other people did, I did my research on the actual Ed Gein, and they
Hmm.
say that a lot of it was fabricated.
Right.
Like
Right.
a lot of his story on the Netflix series was fabricated.
Hmm. Hmm.
And one of the main things that was actually fabricated. Oh, by the way, are we doing spoiler alerts?
We're spoiling
Yeah,
the
we're
hell out of
spoiling the
this
shit
thing.
out of this.
Oh yeah.
I don't care, dude.
Yep.
I don't care. But they said one of the main things one of the main things that was in the show that was fabricated was
Mhm.
the whole sexualization of Ed Gein.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
thought that that was like really
Which
interesting.
is a central part of the story, right?
It
Because
is. It's
the
like
the
everything. It's like so pretty much the way the Netflix series made it seem, it almost seemed like he did everything he did because of his sexual desires.
right, because of his sort of like fetishization of the female body.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you do extensive research, you see that all of that was pretty much embellished
Right.
in the series. But what I sort of like that the creators did was they took a lot of speculation of Ed Gein's story because if you do research, there's not much known about his motives
Yes.
and why he did what he did. And there was a lot of speculation that he was like a necrophiliac and he was
Yes.
what's the word? A
Gynophiliac.
gynophiliac. Yeah, because um so there were a couple things in the series that they actually did get right. Like he dug up the graves of people and
Yes.
he cut up sexual organs,
Hmm.
which actually was true. He cut up a female's body and made like
Yeah.
a female bodysuit.
Right.
And pretty much the whole speculation behind why he did it was, oh, he must have had like a sexual fetish, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And I thought that was interesting that the show just kind of ran with that,
Right.
almost
And
made
so
it
you're
seem like
saying that
fact,
upon further research, the whole sexualization element is not completely confirmed, and in fact, it's something that's very much in question.
Yes.
I guess the two sides of it are, well, first of all, let's take a step back. He has an unhealthily close relationship with his very overbearing mother
Yeah.
in the show. And this is kind of something that you see in a lot of these types of documentaries and shows like this, where you have a mom or maybe parents that are overbearing, that are very, very religious, that are very Christian. And
Mhm.
so, in the beginning, it's like he's dressing up in his mother's clothes, like her lingerie, and is pleasuring himself and things like that. And then he's caught by his mother, who then reprimands him by, quoting scripture to him. And so it's very clear that he was in a very constraining household. His mother was not someone who was trying to understand where his son was coming from, that his son might be very ill, that
Mhm.
his son may be suffering from something psychological. It
Yeah.
was to the mom, it was, my son is evil, you
Well,
know,
you also got to remember this took place in what, the 1940s, 1950s.
40s, 50s, right?
So none of that's all this like mental health stuff was like unexistent back then. You know,
Right. Right.
they weren't aware of things like schizophrenia and
Well,
like
especially in such a
pedophilia.
religious household.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Especially that he was brought up in that overzealous religious household, you know. And what I thought was really interesting was like how you brought up how the mother was like overzealous and like
right.
didn't want him to be with any women and this and that. And I feel like that sort of, oh no, no, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so you wouldn't guess that somebody like him would be more drawn to his mother. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
would think that he would like rebel against her, which is
Right.
actually what
Right.
the brother did in the show.
That's
And
right.
oh,
That's
and
right.
that was another thing. I don't know if I should, go on and say it right now, or
Hmm.
actually, no, fuck, I'm gonna say it right now. But I actually
We'll
looked,
do it live.
yeah, I actually looked into the whole like brother situation and
Okay.
whether he actually killed his brother or not, and that was all speculation.
It's
Also,
that's in question as well.
yeah, so pretty much they said, I don't know if you remember in the show like the whole fire scene, like where there was
Yes.
brush fire and
That's like
everything.
in the beginning. That might be the
So
first episode.
they speculate that the brother died in that brush fire.
That's right.
But there was also a lot of concerns about how he died because it almost seemed like when the authorities came, Ed Gein knew exactly where the body was, you
Hmm.
know. So there was some question as to like whether he had something to do with his murder
Yes.
or not. It wasn't known fact, it was all speculation.
Well,
But
and I
no,
believe that it was the case that there was some bruising on the back of the brother's head that was inconsistent with
yeah.
the police report that, this was just asphyxiation or whatever from the smoke
That's
of
what
the
I was gonna
fire.
say. Yeah, they said
Yeah.
that they ruled it as asphyxiation from the
Hmm.
smoke. You know.
So a lot of the background that we're talking about, which the super religious mother, and to be clear, like I believe you just said this, but the mom, not only, it's not like the mom wanted Ed to wait till he was married to have sex with women or
He
to be
didn't.
with
She didn't
women.
want him to be with a woman at.
Yes. So
Yeah.
her background kind of is important here because she had a very alcoholic husband.
Hmm.
And when the way that the mom talks about being intimate with the husband is that she says at one point that I only allowed him to defile me twice. Defile is the way that she words
Words like sex and yeah,
exactly. So it's just so the idea of being with a woman is so beyond taboo in this household,
yeah,
right? And so what some people are saying, including one review that I read for The Guardian, is that by providing all of this background, right, about how this was just such a constraining household, and that it's kind of eliciting, or the show is trying to elicit sympathy for Ed Gein, who
yeah.
is
I
an
sort of felt
evil,
that way
evil
too.
human.
Well, I think the reason for that is not so that the audience could feel sympathy for him, but there was also known sources from people that he knew that said he was like a very like he came off as a very like gentle and warm
That's
guy.
almost
Like
always the case with these things, by the way. It's
yeah,
always the
like if
neighbors saying, like, oh, what a
like
great guy.
for example, if you know, they actually interviewed the girl Adeline twice. I don't know if you know, but they
Which
interviewed
is the
twice.
girlfriend, Ed Gein's
Yeah.
girlfriend in the show. Yeah.
And which also brought a lot of confusion, because I felt like her storyline in the show was just all over the place. And there
Hmm.
was just so many unanswered questions up until pretty much the very end of the show when you point out
She dips
he
in
has
and out of the
schizophrenia.
show. She
Yeah, she
dips
pretty
in and
much
out.
dips in and out of the show. But also, there's so many different ways that her and Ed Gein end off pretty
Hmm.
much, and you don't know what's the real story and what's
Yeah.
not. And I actually read, and this since it confused me so much watching the show,
It is confusing.
I actually researched it. Like I researched Adeline Watkins, like the real person, and pretty much she told, I think it was like the Minneapolis Tribune or something like that, that she had a relationship with Ed Gein, that they
Hmm.
were in love. He proposed to her, but she felt that she wasn't good enough for him, you
Hmm.
know. But then there was another source that I guess after all the controversy surrounding him came out, another source interviewed her, and then she said that, oh, he was only an acquaintance. I
Right.
only,
Right.
went out with him once or twice, and we went
That's right.
roller skating, and that was it. You know, so which sort of makes you question still, even after watching the show and doing all the research. And I don't even know if people who have written about Ed Gein's story really know the truth about Adeline.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
the way that the
and the way the
show,
show is written is just all over the place about her story.
right.
You know,
The way that the show makes it seem is that Adeline did have a very, very close relationship with Ed Gein, and that they did a lot more than just roller skate together and have a milkshake. That they were engaged and that they were living together. But the way the show makes it seem when she's on the front porch addressing reporters is that she's trying to kind of save her bacon, so to speak,
mm,
right? And which is why she downplays it.
well,
But what you're saying is that that might actually have been the truth. And so that kind of like this is an interesting thing I think that the show does, which is that later in the show it's revealed, and I don't think this is exactly very surprising, it's revealed that Ed Gein suffers from
yeah,
schizophrenia.
yep.
And someone who's schizophrenic, reality and imagination, if you want to call it that, unreality, are they're like intertwined. And so that's why when Gein is recollecting the crimes he's committed, he's like, I think I did this. I'm not sure if I did this. I don't remember doing this. And so Gein is suffering from this inability to grasp reality.
Concerned reality. Yeah.
And as you said, as the viewer, you are also struggling to discern what is actually happening
Yep.
and what's not happening, which can make it kind of a frustrating watch.
Well, what was interesting, and I think we briefly spoke about this before
Yeah,
this episode, but from what I perceived out of the whole thing was after they revealed that he was schizophrenic, right
right.
before I even did any research on Ed Gein, it almost seemed as if everything that went on in the show between him and Adeline just wasn't real at all, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
And which sort of makes you think, like, is Adeline a real person? But then when you see that she's being interviewed and she's saying, oh, like, yes, like Ed Gein was an acquaintance of mine, but we weren't serious
Right.
and this and that, then you start to think, is that the real story? Or like, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, was
Right.
everything
That's right.
in the show sort of in his head about Adeline because he had like this obsession with her,
Right.
you know? But then if you do like extensive research, there is speculation that she did have a relationship with him, you know? So there's this like unknown sort of thing in his life that's like,
Well,
you know,
yeah.
no matter what how much research you do about this guy is just an enigma,
Well, that's the
you
thing.
know?
Like being that he was so ill and that his, like I said, his grasp of reality was so tenuous, he's not a very good source. You know
Mm,
what I mean? Like if he goes, well, I had a relationship with Adeline and I did X, Y, and Z. It's like you have to take
mhm.
everything he says with a grain of salt because of his uneasy relationship with reality. I want to talk about this Guardian review. First of all, I didn't read that many reviews, but from what I read, this was not received well.
All the show, what the whole show
Not re
was received well,
Not at all.
really. Yeah, you know
Multiple
why?
outlets didn't receive it well. Go ahead.
I can guarantee you it was because many people did research behind Ed Gein's real story and seen how fabricated the entire thing
That
was.
what that wasn't the main gripe. That
Really?
wasn't. Maybe some reviews said that. I want your response to this Guardian review here.
Okay.
Lucy Mangan, writing for the Guardian, gives it a 1 star, 1 out of 5.
Wow.
She says that there's and this seems I don't know that I even agree with this criticism. She says it's morally depraved, right? The show is like without, and it's like, well, but the story is morally depraved.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
seriously.
But I guess what she is saying is that the show made viewers, or at least tried to make viewers sympathetic of Ed Gein, and didn't kind of exert enough of a moral voice to condemn him. So here, that's what I get from it. Let me read this
I
quote.
didn't perceive that at all, dude.
So, man,
I didn't perceive that at all from the show.
so the Ed Gein story, Mangan writes, quote, feels like it is interested only in bringing an underexploited piece of true crime estate to market and in demanding sympathy for the man behind the skin masks and boxes of carved out trophies. So to her, this is just like, you had this kind of poor simpleton from, this very rural area in Wisconsin, and he didn't really know any better. And then he's exposed to these pictures from the Nazi Holocaust, and he just doesn't know what to do with that information, these graphic images, and that it's like, what else was he supposed to do? So that what she's saying in this review is that it's too sympathetic to Gein.
Mm. I sort of see where that comes from, but clearly these people didn't do enough research on the real Ed Gein.
Right.
Because if you were to do extensive research on him, you would see that that was like his personality. He was very like sort of like a shell of a person, you know what I
Right.
mean? He was very reserved, he was like shy, he was like
Yeah.
he came off as very kind. And
Hmm.
I actually looked up because I actually wondered that myself if he was actually like a simpleton, you know?
Hmm.
And that was another thing I looked up, and I don't know how maybe they gave him an IQ test at some point, like when he was locked up or like
Right.
institutionalized, and he had a normal IQ. He wasn't.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
they just said like his speech was slow,
Hmm.
and that was it. That was pretty much it. Like his speech was slow.
Well,
But
there is this.
he had a normal IQ.
I've
So for
well,
people to say he was like a simpleton was
well,
like,
but don't you remember that scene though where he's being interrogated and they ask him, he's attached to a lie detector, and they say, choose a number between 1 and 10, and it takes him like 30 seconds to write down the number 8.
Yeah, but I don't think that really means anything though. Like,
Or there's another scene where Adeline gives him a book and he goes, "This looks like an awfully long book. I don't know that I could really read it." So I
well,
think there were some nudges.
that could be just sort of playing on him being like, like sort of living like a farmer life and not being
Sure.
very educated.
Yeah.
I don't think that really has anything to do with his IQ.
Not him necessarily being dumb.
Yeah, not him necessarily being dumb, but just being like sort of not in that academic atmosphere, kind of, you know?
Definitely not.
Yeah, oh, definitely not.
Definitely not an academic.
Yeah, but
Uh, one
nah,
one thing so there obviously, like I said, a lot of the reviews are not positive. One thing that I did enjoy is the sort of scene setting. Like this is very clearly out of the 1950s. Like I love the look of the diner, the feel of the diner. Everyone's drinking a pop or a milkshake.
and the
I
music in the
the
background and
music in
everything,
the
right?
background,
Yeah, like the swing and soul. Like,
yeah, the
is that what you
the
call it,
roller
soul?
skating rink, right? Like I was
Yeah,
watching that and I was like, do we even have those anymore? Like the roller skating
roller
rinks?
skating rinks. Hell yeah, dude.
I
I
I
mean,
haven't
I
seen
remember
that.
when I was a kid, I used to go to a place in Long Island all the time, but like, who
Okay,
knows?
yeah.
Maybe they're being obsolete now because of all this technology, all this
I wouldn't be
social media and
surprised.
shit. Like, who knows? You
Well,
know?
I feel like they set the scene really well of like small town 1950s. And that was actually all of these reviews for all of their criticisms said that this was shot really well and that what's his name? Hunnam did a real like what
Oh
was your
yeah, I was gonna
impression of
say
his
that. So
performance?
at first, when when I first heard the whole like accent and everything,
Yeah, it was
you
kind of
know,
striking. It's
because
kind of
I'm
striking.
used to seeing him in like playing like a badass character in Sons of Anarchy,
Sons of
which is
Anarchy, right?
which by the way is one of my favorite shows of all time. Like
Hmm.
it's awesome,
You're a
right?
big fan of that show.
Love it, yeah. And just seeing him in that character kind of like threw me off because I'm just used to seeing him as like this sort of like badass sort of pretty boy character, But then but then if you look up Ed Gein in real life, he sort of looked like him. So then
Yes.
it made me think like who better to play him than Charlie Hunnam, you
Right,
know?
right.
So I so so I it kind of rubbed off a little bit after like the first episode or the first two episodes. I
Yeah.
kind of got used to him being like Ed Gein.
Yeah.
So it didn't
Yeah.
really affect my opinion of it that much.
I thought he did an amazing job.
I thought he did a good job too.
I thought he did a great job. And
Yeah.
I also think that what's her is it Augusta, the mother? The mother I thought did a very good job. Gein's mother.
Yeah, I thought she did a good job too, but I
Because she kind
also
of scares
thought
the crap out of you.
yeah, I also thought that the choice of Adeline being like a much younger
That
actress,
was
Charlie
strange.
Hunnam, was a
Yeah,
little bit strange because
agreed.
if you do like the research and stuff, they were like they never said that she was a lot younger than him.
Right, right.
They never specify an age difference, but when you
Yeah.
first watch the show, it almost seems like pedophilic,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like he
The
looked
age
like
gap that is implied there is like
yeah,
uncomfortable.
like he's looking at her through the keyhole and she's
Yes.
undressing and she looks very young.
Yes. Yes.
And it's almost implied that he's also like a pedophile on top of like all the other things that he's labeled as, you
Well,
know?
again, like you said, that there's so much creative license that's taken here. There's a lot of liberties that's taken here. For example, his being somehow helpful to finding Ted Bundy while
Mm.
he's in that
Oh, that
home.
was totally
Like
fabricated.
there's a
Totally
lot of
fabricated.
fabrication.
That kind of pissed me off, dude. That like that detail kind of real.
Well, I at the same time you have to understand that like this isn't just a straight documentary. This is this is like kind of a Hollywood
Yeah, you got to
sort of
be
thing.
able to discern like what they're putting in there just to see what sells and everything. Like you said,
Yeah,
sex. You said it. Sex sells.
sex sells.
Even
Yep.
though that wasn't like a big part of his, like him being who he was.
Yeah, but it was
They threw
every
that in there.
moment. It was every waking
Yeah,
moment of that show.
but
Um,
it also makes you think. why the sex organs? You know what I mean? Like, why did he cut out the sex?
If he
You
wasn't
know,
sexually
if he
aroused.
wasn't sexually aroused,
Right, right, right.
what
I know.
satisfaction would he have with the female body that he had to literally make a female bodysuit and
Right.
keep all these vulvas in his.
And he didn't do this to men. At least I don't think so.
Well, the way even when I did my research, it sounded like it was mostly women.
It was, yeah.
So, all this speculation could somewhat be true, you know? I mean, not that and that's another thing I wanted to touch upon. I actually
Yeah.
looked this up too.
Mhm.
So they were pretty much saying that that whole thing with who's the what is it, the transsexual, what's her name? Christine Jorgensen or whatever,
I think that sounds right.
the 1950s, right?
Yep. Yep.
So they were pretty much saying that he idolized her. And I don't know
Right.
if you remember that scene where he's talking to her on the ham radio or
Or
whatever.
at least he thinks he's talking to her on the
Or,
ham
yeah, at
radio.
least he thinks he's talking
Yeah.
to her. They said they threw that part in there of her telling him that he's not a transsexual
Hmm.
just to pretty much be politically correct and not offend like transgender people, saying that,
Hmm.
like, oh, there's no way Ed Gein could have been like a transgender person. You
Right.
know,
Right.
that was another thing I looked up that I thought was really interesting too. That they had to throw that in there just to
Mm.
discern that Ed Gein wasn't
Right. 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 Right.
transgender
Right.
and that he was in fact a gynophiliac, which
Yes.
is also
Which, by the way, for the record,
unknown which
right. I thought
that's
that
even
I
true or
see.
not. You
I was
know?
under the impression that that was just a given, and my understanding of that gynophilia is that it's like usually a male's arousal by dressing up as a woman.
Yeah,
And so, but that's even so a lot of,
and it
a,
could have been true. You know?
as you say, a lot of his story is not clear. A lot of the investigations were not thorough, or so there's just so much about this that we don't know if it's true or not. Let's get down to our three
Yeah, I
words.
see. I see. We only got 8 minutes
I'm
left.
curious to hear what your three
Yeah.
words are. Do you want to kick that
Oh,
off?
yeah, dude. I'll definitely kick it off. Wait, do you
All
want me to
right.
read all three of them at once, or just like introduce them
No,
one?
do one at a time.
All right. So first word I'm gonna say is graphic for obvious
Yeah,
reasons.
for
You
obvious
know,
reasons.
not not even just because of like killing. Honestly, the killings weren't even the graphic parts. The graphic parts were
No, not really.
all the body parts that he kept in the house, and
Yeah,
all the furniture he made out of body parts, which by the way we didn't even talk about. Like,
yeah,
he literally made a chair out of someone's chest, and you've seen the nipple
yep,
of the person
yep,
on the chair. That
yep.
is
Which is all true, by the like
that
that.
yeah,
I don't.
that's
None of that
that
was
part's all
fabricated.
true. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, all the grave digging stuff was
yeah,
not fabricated at
yeah.
all.
Hmm.
The second word I'm going to use is confusing for reasons that we've already discussed, because you can't really discern what's true and what's not. And as even in the end, when they reveal that he's schizophrenic, it
Hmm.
still makes you think like how much of this series was real and how much of it was in his
That's
head,
right. That's right.
you know? And the third and final word I'm going to use is disturbing. For
Yeah.
again, obvious
Yes.
reasons,
Because of how graphic
because of how graphic it was, and not even just how graphic it was, just the whole psychology behind it was sick. You know,
Yeah.
like the whole transsexual thing and the
Hmm.
whole you know, using his sexual urges to justify, not really to justify what he did, but to explain what he did.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right.
that's the part that I thought was the most disturbing. Not just like the digging the bodies up and using them as furniture,
But
but
his getting off on it.
the sexualization behind it is
Yeah.
what I found super disturbing.
Yeah. And it's in your face at every moment of this show, the
Yes,
sexualization.
yes, yeah,
Um, those are very good words. I think
uh-huh.
that basically sums it up. That my three words. The
That's
first one,
probably like two of your three words, right?
it's I'm basically using synonyms. So the first word is lurid. In other words, this is overly graphic to the point of it being just like really uncomfortable. I mean, there were parts of, and I watch thrillers, I watch all kinds of stuff. This was at parts really difficult to watch.
I'm actually shocked that you like, because you usually like psychological
Well,
thrillers
that's the
and
thing.
stuff.
See,
This
see, like
wasn't really
with
like.
psychological thrillers, yeah, there's a lot of room for the imagination, and you go, is the person there, or is they whatever? There's not much left to the imagination here.
Mm.
It's very explicit. It's very visceral. The second word, and I think we didn't really touch on this too much, self-aware. There's many allusions throughout this to the fact that audiences have this morbid curiosity when it comes to characters or people like Ed Gein. There's a scene where Alfred Hitchcock is watching some,
Oh, we didn't even touch upon all that
we didn't
stuff.
even touch upon
The
that, but
pop
there's a
culture
scene where
yeah.
Hitchcock, I think after the release of Psycho, is watching some gory, crappy movie in a theater, and his wife is so like offended by how disgusting and kind of like needlessly erotic this movie is that she leaves. And I think Hitchcock kind of says to himself like, did I create this? You know? And it makes you think to yourself that maybe the even sicker people are the people that enjoy this kind of stuff, that
Well,
enjoy
that's sort of,
watching
yeah,
this
that's what
stuff.
the show was pretty much alluding to.
Yeah, so I think
Like,
the show is very self-aware, like
yeah, like
that.
the turning point of America from Ed Gein Story to the creation of Psycho and the
Yes,
Chainsaw Massacre.
there's an understanding on the part of these producers and directors that people are going to eat this stuff up because they
Mm,
have this kind of sick, morbid curiosity. So
yeah.
that's why I say self-aware. And
Wow,
then,
yeah, I totally forgot to even touch upon all that
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and then the last one is overdone, which is not exactly positive, but I think it's like, okay, first of all, it's 8 episodes. It's long. I
I
didn't
wouldn't
think it was
say
going to be. It's 8 episodes of this guy who's clearly very mentally unwell, exhuming bodies from the cemetery, dismembering bodies, creating furniture out of bodies. There's, the images of the Holocaust. It's like, okay, we get it. Like he
But there
has
was there was also so
felt like
much
it was
to
overdone.
say. There was also so much to say, even in this podcast that we're doing. We only have 3 minutes left, and I feel like we haven't even touched upon, the influences of like serial killers throughout
Yes.
history and pop culture. There's just so many
There's
layers
too much
to
for a
to
podcast.
this
There's too
show.
much for a
Yeah,
podcast.
that it's like, like, and I thought that the entire last episode, like you might have maybe thought it was a little bit drawn out, but I think the
Yeah.
entire point of the last episode was to sort of touch upon that. Like
Oh, totally.
if you notice, the last episode wasn't even about Ed Gein himself. It was
Mhm.
about other
The
serial.
influence.
It was about Richard Speck. It was about what was that fat guy's name? Jerry something that wore the
I
high
can't
heels and
remember.
shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Ted Bundy,
Hmm.
right? It was like he just
There
had
was that Pacific
it
Northwest
wasn't even
killer.
just his story. It was
No,
the effect that his
yeah,
story had on pop culture and society. You know what
yes.
I mean? There was just so much to tell about that.
Well,
It
and
wasn't
the
just
whole like, and people
Midwest.
writing him,
Yeah, people. What you said?
people writing him letter. Like you see, like when you watch the Jeffrey Dahmer thing or Bundy, that there always seems to be this morbid cult following around these serial killers. Gein might have been like the start of that, with
Yeah,
people sending mail and
absolutely. Yeah, dude.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it was like Jack the Ripper that kind of started all that, but Jack the Ripper was like unknown. His identity or her identity was
There's a
unknown.
there's a mention of Jack the Ripper in the show, I believe. I recall
Was
the.
there? I don't remember that.
All
But
right.
Ed Gein was the first actual figure to put to face. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And that's why there's just so much to say about him. You know?
All right, Matt. The
Yep.
Guardian gives it a 1 star.
That is insane, dude.
Now
That's
we rate
harsh.
out of
That's
10.
harsh,
We
bro.
rate out of 10. So out of 10, the Ed Gein story gets what, according to Matt?
According to me, I would say, bro, honestly, I would rate it like a 7.5. I enjoyed it, dude, because like how are you gonna judge a series based on like how it was supposed to be in real life? I mean, not that that was like the main consensus, but I'm sure a lot of people felt that way. Like, oh, it was a fabrication and all that other shit.
All right.
But
Well,
yeah,
to
all
cut
right.
in here because I have no idea how many seconds I have, I'm gonna be really harsh and give it a 5 because I just thought it
Wow.
was too much. It was
Harsh, harsh.
overdone. All right, guys. Yeah, you've been watching two guys doing a show. Matt, any
Tune in for the
parting
next
words?
episode. Tune in for the next episode. We'll I don't even know what the next one we're gonna do is about, but
It'll be a
just stay
surprise.
tuned.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care, guys.
Peace.
We'll do it live. Fuck it.